morning, everyone. Today I'm joined by Dean David Taylor, our Senior Associate Dean for Student Learning and Academic Advising at our School of Medicine. And Dean Taylor plays an invaluable role in teaching and mentoring students in our GEMS program, the Georgetown Experimental Medical Studies program. So David, thank you for taking the time to be with us for this conversation this morning. You've been a member of our community now for 30 years. And as a member of the leadership team for our School of Medicine, you've shown a deep commitment to strengthening the context for learning, mentorship, support for our students on their journey into their vocation in medicine. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and what has inspired you to continue this work for so many years here in our community?
Well, I'll start by saying that teaching is the best form of optimism, because you truly have an opportunity to see the knowledge that you're able to share, but also those wonderful words of wisdom and life skills. You share it, and then you see it incorporated with your students' own gifts and talents with which they present, and it blossoms. And if we ever look at an opportunity of how can we contribute to the greater good, I think it's always through our next generation of leaders and those who will be humble servants, and that's our students. And so the 30 years has truly been a joy over that time. You know, when I started back in 1990, that was under the leadership of Dean Joy Williams, who's our retired Senior Associate Dean for Students, and Dr. Arthur Hoyt, one of the founders of the GEMS program. And they both reminded me that each context that you engage for a student, it's literally their hopes and dreams. And if we think about that, you have the privilege to be associated, I like to say associated with success, associated with someone's hopes and dreams. That's an awesome responsibility. So that's sort of the philosophy I always take as we engage our valued medical students each year as they come into the School of Medicine. And in the role as Dean for Student Learning, my role is to help our valued students learn how to learn. It's a nice little phrase we've coined, learn how to learn for the rigor and the challenges that we will encounter in medicine. So all of our students come with a level of success in their learning strategies and how they process information. Medicine, as many of us have heard, requires a rapid assimilation of evolving information and a lot of integration across different contexts. And so those valued strategies have to be adapted. And that's where we come in through our sort of larger group foundational ways in which they can adapt their learning strategies. And then we do a lot of one-on-one consultations, because I'm a firm believer that the learning process is customized, meaning that we each come with some core skill sets, but how we process and how we look at the social engagement around learning and how our environment impacts how we engage and solve problems, that's unique to us. And so I'm always excited about learning, what is that for the next student? And if you listen carefully, you'll see some very unique distinctions that give them their brightness and gifts and talents for service in the future. And so that's my primary role. We spend a lot of time working with students in large groups and small groups across our medical curriculum. And we also do that, of course, in some of our other contexts, both in terms of our post-baccalaureate program, which we'll probably talk about in a little bit, as well as some of our outreach programs from the School of Medicine.
Thank you. I mentioned a moment ago, you serve as director for our GEMS post-baccalaureate program, which has become a model for shaping hundreds of physicians and other medical professions from underrepresented backgrounds. As you reflect on the program's success, what are the aspects of the program that you believe have been most impactful for those who have participated over the years?
I have to start by saying GEMS is unique in that there is a culture of service and understanding that the legacy of those who have come before those valued students enter gyms are now pillars of service in the medical community. And so it really starts with sort of an awesome understanding of the legacy of gyms. Valued students from disadvantaged and underrepresented backgrounds, as we've noted, who at some point in their educational journey encountered some challenges. And in the philosophy of our Jesuit faith, the Jesuits always looked at how can we empower those who may have been disenfranchised or encountered some challenges along the way in life. How can we empower those valued individuals to realize their own greatness? And that's where gyms starts, right? We think about gyms, think about polishing, right? That wonderful stone that then begins to shine. And so the first, I think, core component of success is to recognize who you are in terms of your opportunity in medicine, because many of the valued students have been told medicine is not a career for you. And all of a sudden, there's a valued group of individuals in the Georgetown community, our outstanding faculty, staff, senior leadership, our valued support staff, everyone saying, we support you and we're going to help you on this journey. I mean, literally everyone. Valued team members when we were in person in the bookstore, they know the gym students. Our valued facilities team who work overnight, they see the students in the library, the faculty. So there is this context that you have an identity of success. As you work toward that goal, we will support you. And that philosophy is over and over again espoused by our alumni with our current students. And so they come now with a new sense of what we refer to in terms of diversity and inclusion, a sense of belonging. And Dr. Chang, who's our Senior Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion, has really helped us expand that to all of our valued students across the campus. And that sense of belonging then allows you to be open to the next core component, which is change of learning behaviors. Now we're starting to get a little bit into education because you're talking to a Bandura fan or a social cognitivist who recognizes that there are other factors in our environment that influence motivation for learning. So we can tap into that through the individual advising which each of our students, as I said before earlier, it's that customized context. That's a unique component that students have not had. And when we tap into what is their strength in learning and what are the other core competencies we want to add to that strength, all of a sudden we see change. And the change is happening real time in the actual medical curriculum, such that we espouse the same standards. The standards are not changing. The student is changing his or her skill sets to reach or exceed those standards. Those two core components of gyms really make it special, and then it brings in context of increased self-efficacy and confidence. And as we might share with our faculty, they say the gyms truly shine. One of our faculty who's still active, retired emeritus, but still active, Dr. Nolan, commonly says, the gyms is that special jewel in the Georgetown crown.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Now, you recently welcomed the newest cohort of students at the start of this academic year. How are our students adjusting to this new learning environment? How are you finding ways to transition your support for students to the virtual mode?
That's an excellent question, because we have certainly had some valued innovation in the process. One of the cornerstones, if you will, of gyms, we call it interactive learning sessions, where students are required to go to our old-fashioned blackboard or our newly attuned whiteboards, and you conceptualize or concept map the understanding, right, around your knowledge. And everyone in gyms, who's come to gyms, they hear about these presentations, and they can be growth points, right? Because sometimes they can be uncomfortable because you feel somewhat exposed if there are areas of improvement. but because of the supportive group you go through the process. And we also know that in our moments of discomfort, we can have our greatest growth. So that's a major component of these interactive learning sessions that really promote critical thinking and problem solving. How do you duplicate that in a virtual environment? Well, we've been having fun, and the current gym students are also having fun because now these students have become the teacher. So one of the things I always love is when students can teach us new information, right? They've taken everything we've shared with them and now they truly become the teacher. One of the things we've done using the Zoom platform is to now have students conceptualize still on whiteboards, and then they image those conceptualizations, and we can package it as a learning story, if you will, and then that's shared on the screen as the student becomes the teacher for the group. And we have an interactive process where they're presenting, and of course, there's a Socratic inquiry along the way to stimulate again that context of you conceptualizing and bringing concepts together, but also the presentation skill competencies, the what I call thinking on your feet competencies when those dynamic questions come in. And that has been able to simulate very reasonably our interactive process, because that's the cornerstone to have students practice that process. And then we have, of course, additional context around assessments, which we can do through the interactive polling to make it more interactive. Of course, we've also used appropriate context from gaming to look at medical concepts, but to make it engaging and fun with accountability, because there's typically some enrichment assessment, as I like to say, after that process. So a lot of interactive to keep the students engaged. And I really want to thank also our Candles team and our team at Dahlgren Memorial Library in the leadership of Dean McCann and Dr. Teo Park, who helped us fine tune our interactive processes for learning and teaching, but also to appreciate these targeted breaks and other components you can do because students are sitting. And so we look at intensive 20 to 40-minute segments. We come out, there's a strategic break, could be 10, 15 minutes. There may be a different activity to keep them engaged again, but being mindful of that because of our virtual environment has been helpful, and also mindful of how to use the technology to keep the interaction going. So our students have been very receptive to it. We've now been underway. We start earlier than anyone else. We start the first week in July. So we've been working hard now, and the students are progressing well.
Beautiful. Thank you. I recently had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Angela Mitchell and Rosemary Kilkenny as part of these weekday conversations. And Dr. Mitchell talked about the concept of modeling within the context of mentorship and the impact that it can have for students. Can you offer us your reflections on this idea? What role does mentorship play in GEMS?
The mentorship is certainly a cornerstone because the students are seeking two components. One, ultimately, that journey to physicianship where they'll be serving, right? So as a physician, so we have our alumni as well as both alumni of the GEMS program who also attended Georgetown School of Medicine, as well as other alumni who are interested in supporting the GEMS program, interact with the students so that they can see the clear, not only just competencies of the physician in different specialties, et cetera, but also to appreciate the resilience that is necessary along that journey, because there will be inevitable, right? There'll be inevitable valleys, but there'll also be a lot of hilltops where they're on the top, right? And feel good. And it goes up and then eventually levels off. But this profession of service does require a level of resiliency. I think what they also appreciate that many have been missing that's really important in GEMS is this notion of investing in your individual success academically with respect to our faculty and our staff, but also there appears to be, as the students have said to us, this relationship building and trust that we truly value you also, not just as a student, but as we can see you as a future professional. And there's a certain authenticity and integrity in that process that goes back to Dr. Cheng's building a sense of belonging. So the mentorship has evolved from a context of not simply just, I will mentor you for the profession, here are the professional competencies. I will mentor you also for some of the resilience of life experiences. I will mentor you also for the context of your academic advising. Those are all important, but now the mentoring is also talking about the building of authentic, collaborative relationships, which again is the forerunner of what they're going to be doing in medicine. And so the models that we have, in essence, between our faculty and our staff and our alumni, it's so critical. But here's something that really has, I think, impacted the students very well in terms of authenticity in relationships. So we know we're in a time of societal challenge with racial injustice going on. And even prior to the racial injustice context that's come to the forefront, right? We know it's always been there. Georgetown has been a leader in even our own context in the enslavement of peoples of African descent. And we've had this ongoing excellent initiative for our reconciliation, slavery memory, and that whole initiative to assure that as we move forward, we keep the context of this memory, but how do we also reconcile that for the greater good? So Georgetown is living up to its social justice context from its faith anchoring that we are for social justice. We move forward, and there have been a lot of, as you know, over the decades, I've seen many of your communications, right, on the different things that have impacted our society. And now we're in this current context with the, unfortunate, very unfortunate deaths of African-American men and women. And we're talking about, George Floyd, of course, but we can go back as early as Tamir Rice as one example, with 12 years old, right? We have Breonna Taylor. It's been almost 200 days and still no charge in that case. So our students have been watching, what are we doing to reflect our values? And we have created a context at Georgetown based on the modeling where students can engage us in a challenging way and say, listen, we think this should change. Listen, we are concerned, what are we doing as an institution? And we saw it, of course, in our earlier context with the Reconciliation Project, and the entire campus of students voted as one initiative to support, right? And there are many other contexts. Now in racial justice in the School of Medicine, our medical students challenged our administration. We want to be proactive in our advocacy and response. We espouse cura personalis, care for the person. How do we do that in this context? We got to be proactive. And so between the collaboration between the students feeling empowered to drive a process, you see, you have to create a climate of empowerment. And then we as leaders have to be able to listen. That's what we model. Receive without getting defensive. That's what we model. And then begin to show collaboration that lives up to our ideals and our mission. And that's what's happened. But there has to be an environment for that to happen, because we know that doesn't happen everywhere. And so as a result, we now have the Racial Justice Committee for Change with students and faculty and staff that are looking at initiatives internal to the School of Medicine and across the medical center, and some in collaboration with other initiatives across the campus, and external. And it's a work in progress, but isn't it good to know that you can have that type of open dialogue that sometimes is uncomfortable, but we have opportunity for growth in our discomfort? And here's the biggest piece, action outcomes are there. It's not just talk. It's not just a committee. There's action, just like we've seen in other initiatives that deal with some of the societal challenges, and Georgetown has been the forefront of that. So this modeling that we're doing now, which is part of the learning process and part of this professional competency that we do not only for our gym students, but all medical students, is modeling how do you live up to the Georgetown ideals of advocacy, of social justice, right? How do you do that from public policy if you're one of our outstanding public policy students? How do you do it from a historical point of view if you're one of our history students? Because history informs the present and the future. And we could look at every aspect of our educational paradigm. That's powerful. And that, I think, is a key component of what Dr. Mitchell and Rosemary Kilkenny are talking about when they say this new level of modeling in the framework of mentorship. Are we who we say we are? And the answer at Georgetown is yes, we are. You see, I got a little excited about that part because that's real context, and that's part of your learning to navigate life's challenges and how we're going to contribute that as leaders.
If we are, it's because of the commitment of members of our community just like you. 30 years you've been engaged in this work here, and I can't begin to express our appreciation to you, David. In closing, is there one message that you'd like to share with the members of our community as we get this fall underway?
Indeed. The future is truly optimistic. And it's optimistic because each of us have an opportunity to continue to collaborate together for the greater good. You know, sometimes we talk about higher education being a bubble, right? Where we want a secure environment. Yes, we have that. We want to be able to thrive and have dialogue and, share ideals and ideas, and we do that. But what's exciting about Georgetown that I've seen as it continues over 30 years and continues to get better and better and better is that that bubble actually lives in reality. And out of this great bubble comes meaningful ideas for change, comes leadership for change, and we see that in all elements of our campus and university life. And so for our students who are returning, and for our new students who are joining us as the inaugural students in their freshman year, we say, welcome. We want to build relationship with you. We want to help you reach your goals on your journey. And we hope you will join us in sharing your gifts and talents again for the greater good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Thank you. It's been wonderful to have this time with you this morning. And thank you for everything that you do on behalf of our community. And I look forward to being with all of you again soon. Take care of yourselves and take care of everyone around you for everywhere.